Hello friends, we have been looking into ways to express the second law of thermodynamics, particularly the one that enables us to describe the state of or describe a dynamic system. Now, second law of thermodynamics, when taken in its original form or in its current form or in its rather the canonical form, the description of the state of the system largely relies on one particular thermodynamic variable, that is the entropy. And this being a thermodynamic variable and not so accessible to us in the physical world, we are trying to come up with different ways of describing the state of the dynamic system. Now, in the previous lecture, we derived at a combination of the thermodynamic variables and we described it as, or we presented it as a new thermodynamic variable. Now, in the previous lecture, we attempted to express the second law of thermodynamics through the combination of the thermodynamic variables and which we refer to as the Helmholtz free energy. Now, before proceeding any further, we will just revisit this derivation in order to capture certain points. So, the first point that enabled us to arrive at this description that enabled us to arrive at this particular thermodynamic variable and use this variable to describe the state of the dynamic system similar to that of the entropy was our consideration of the overall entropy. Now, the second law of thermodynamics based on the entropy alone can be expressed by considering the change in the entropy. So, when there is no change in the entropy, for instance, let us confine ourselves to the system. When there is no change in the entropy of the system while the system is exhibiting a dynamic change, then the system, there are two possibilities. One, the system is exhibiting a reversible change, or the system is in a stable condition. It is rather static. Now, a system can be static when there is no change in the entropy, or if the system is dynamic, you observe there is a change exhibited by the system, but still the entropy remains the same, then the system is rather adhering to or performing a reversible action. Now, the other possibility is the system will increase its entropy when the system is moving from an unstable state to a stable state. So, when the system is experiencing a spontaneous or an irreversible change, the corresponding change in the entropy is always in one direction, which is the entropy is always increasing. Now, in the previous lecture, we saw that the same condition holds for the surrounding as well. So, you have a system and the system is present in a surrounding and the system is exhibiting a change. Depending on what the change is exhibited by the system, there is a corresponding change in the entropy that is also observed in the surrounding. Despite the reversal in the signs for individual thermodynamic variables, the overall entropy change, the criterion that dictates the reversible and irreversible change, remains the same for the surroundings as well. So, we saw in case of entropy, the possibilities are zero, and the possibilities are either the change in the entropy there should not be any change in the entropy, or the change in the entropy should be in the positive direction. The change in the entropy should always increase for the system. The same goes for surrounding. This is one of the critical points that we discussed in the previous lecture, that when we also focus on the surrounding, the change in the entropy of the surrounding can either be positive, increasing, or there cannot be any change in the entropy of the surroundings. So, you have a setup, you have a surrounding, and you have a system. The system is exhibiting a reversible or an irreversible change. Correspondingly, the entropy or the surrounding is also changing. This change to the surrounding, we quantify it through the change in the entropy. Now, there are two possibilities for the change in the entropy exhibited by the surrounding. One, there can be no change in the entropy of the surroundings, or there can be progressive increase in the entropy of the surroundings, similar to what we observed for the system, and similar to what we observe for the system. When the surrounding is not exhibiting any change in the entropy, then the change that we observe is reversible. If there is an increase in the entropy of the surrounding, in that case, what we observe, the change that leads to the change in the entropy of the surrounding is irreversible or spontaneous, meaning the change is now reaching towards or facilitating or enabling the system to reach towards a stable state. So, whatever condition that applies for the system, particularly in the framework of second law of thermodynamics, also applies for the surroundings. Now, having gained this understanding, when we consider the overall change in the entropy, now when we express the overall change in the entropy, which is nothing but the sum of the change in the system and the surroundings, so sum of the entropy change in the system and the surrounding, given that both during a given dynamic state, both system and surrounding exhibit the same form of change in entropy, the criteria for the overall entropy remains the same. The overall change in the entropy remains the same. So similar to that of the system and surrounding, the overall change in the entropy can either be 0 or it can be positive, and positive it indicates a spontaneous or an irreversible change. So the reason we are interested on describing this irreversible change using different variables is because, or we are focusing largely on the irreversible change, it's primarily because our ultimate goal is to understand the different state of a given material. So we have a material, we raise the temperature of the material or we reduce the temperature of the material, and we want to see how in response to this change in temperature the material behaves. So essentially, when we change the temperature of the material, you are disturbing the stable state of the material, and once you disturb the stable state of the material, what the material observes is there is a new stable state that is being formed. So you disturb the current stable state of a material by increasing its temperature, and once you increase the temperature, you have created a new stable state, and now you have allowed for a spontaneous reaction, a spontaneous change from the old stable state to the new stable state. So the old stable state now becomes unstable because you have raised the temperature, and from that state you will observe the system moving spontaneously to the new stable state. And this is governed by the second law of thermodynamics. This is governed by the increase in entropy, and then entropy is not quite accessible for us. We are looking for other thermodynamics. We are describing other thermodynamic variables. Now, so the starting point for our description, for our derivation of the Helmholtz free energy is this, and for spontaneous change, the combination of both change in the entropy of the system and the surroundings should always increase. Now, another critical point we considered while deriving the Helmholtz free energy is we assumed that the volume is constant. So the volume of the system, so therefore corresponding to the volume of the surroundings. So we assumed that the volume of the system is constant despite the change exhibited by it. So that is a spontaneous change that is exhibited by the system, and despite this change the volume is constant. Through this assumption enabled us to reduce the expression for the entropy change in the surroundings. This assumption here enabled us to rather express the entropy change in the surrounding in a simplistic manner, because when you assume the volume is 0, your change in the internal energy is nothing but it's the change in the, or it's the equivalent to the amount of heat transfer. When you assume the change or the volume remains constant, it means, we implicitly mean that when the work that is done on or by the system, that automatically involves the change in the volume due to its canonical description is 0. So therefore we were able to directly relate the change in the internal energy to that of the heat transfer. So this relation was enabled by the assumption that volume is constant. Once we were able to do that, and we were able to relate the heat exchange of the surrounding to that of the heat exchange of the system, meaning the magnitude of both these are constant, only the signs vary. When we were able to do that, then it became possible for us to rewrite this whole expression as the overall change in the entropy is the sum of change in the entropy of the system minus this relation here. So the change in the internal energy of the system to that of the temperature. Now for this derivation, again we assumed the temperature to be constant. For this derivation we assume temperature to be constant. So what we were able to do now is we were able to play around with these different terms, and we wanted to ensure that the expression is written in such a way that the temperature comes here and also the change in the internal energy is positive. So when we do that, the expression becomes, so this expression can be rewritten as so now we have an expression wherein you are relating the entropy, internal energy and the temperature. Now according to the second law of thermodynamics, there should always be an increase in entropy for a spontaneous or an irreversible reaction to progress. However, since we have a negative sign here, this criteria is reversed. But for this negative sign, we have to stick to the criteria that is rendered by the second law of thermodynamics. But we have this negative sign here, so therefore the whole criteria gets reversed. So therefore it means for a spontaneous change to occur, this term here with this negative or this negative term here should be less than 0 and it should keep on decreasing. So correspondingly we saw that since the right hand side of the term should be less than 0 and should keep on decreasing for a spontaneous change, for a change in the state of the system from an unstable state to a stable state, this particular term which is negative should keep on decreasing. Then since it is equal to these combinations of term here, then this particular term should also, so this is again, even though we started with the combination of the system and surrounding, we have arrived at an expression that exclusively deals with our system. So this should also be less than 0 and should keep on decreasing for the spontaneous change or an irreversible change to occur. So we started with the combination of system and surroundings, and we rather derived in such a way that we end up with a set of expression that exclusively deals with the system alone. And since there is a negative sign associated with this, particularly the entropy, there is a negative sign associated with the entropy, this combination of term, unlike the original or the canonical description of the second law of thermodynamics, this combination of terms should be less than 0 or keep on decreasing for the spontaneous reaction to proceed. Now when we expand the terms that are associated with this, we saw that this can be expressed as U2 minus Ts2 minus of U1 minus Ts1 should be less than 0, and this we termed as Helmholtz free energy. So ultimately the criteria dictating a spontaneous reaction is that a spontaneous reaction is possible between two states of the system when the corresponding Helmholtz free energy are different and the Helmholtz free energy of the final state is less than that of the initial state. So this derivation helps us describe the spontaneous reaction not based on the criteria, helps us describe the criteria for the spontaneous reaction not exclusively based on entropy but a combination of terms that include internal energy, temperature and entropy. Now when we do that, we arrive at the description for the Helmholtz free energy, and now the spontaneous reaction based on this Helmholtz free energy can be described as a spontaneous reaction or an irreversible reaction is possible only when the free energy, the Helmholtz free energy of the final state is less than that of the initial state, or in other words the difference between the Helmholtz free energy of the final state and the initial state is less than 0. Only in such a case we would be able to state that this change in the states is spontaneous or it is irreversible in nature. So when you are considering say a change in the state of a material, so you have a material in its solid state and you are raising its temperature and it transforms to liquid state. So your temperature is greater than the melting point, then just by looking at this change in the state of the system, you could state that the Helmholtz free energy of the liquid is less than that of the Helmholtz free energy of the solid. So it could be supposing if you are reducing the temperature, if you are experiencing the solidification of a system, if you are experiencing the freezing of water in your ice, or rather freezing of water in your freezer or in your fridge, what you essentially observe is the Helmholtz free energy of the ice at that particular temperature is less than the Helmholtz free energy of the water at that particular temperature, and because of this difference in the Helmholtz free energy, the system now wants to move towards the lower free energy. So essentially, when we say that one free energy is less than the other free energy, so what we have created is a condition wherein the system is now at A1 and now there is a lower free energy state A2. Now the system essentially then wants to move from A1 to A2. So this is essentially what we have achieved through this derivation here. Now we have arrived at a criteria. We are talking in terms of free energy that involves combination of different thermodynamic variables. So the change in the state of the system is irreversible and spontaneous if and only if its new free energy, its stable free energy is less than that of the initial or the unstable free energy. Now we have seen that there are critical aspects that are critical points that we considered while deriving at this criterion here. So initially the criterion based on entropy alone. Now we have a criterion that is based on free energy. Now one of the critical criterion was we assumed that the volume and the temperature is constant. So one of the criteria is that we assume that volume and temperature of the given change in the state of the system is constant. So we will progressively try to relax this criterion and see where this derivation leads us to. So in order to derive at this expression, we made two distinct assumptions. We will keep or relax these assumptions and see how these particular criteria that is based on the Helmholtz free energy changes. Now in order to do so, or before doing that, let us just consider the graphical representation of what it means when we say that the free energy of the system, particularly the Helmholtz free energy of the system, changes when you have a change in the state of the system. So you have two state, you have an unstable state here, you have a stable state here. Now what we essentially have is the system moving from unstable state to stable state. So it means the Helmholtz free energy of the system is keep on decreasing and reaches a specific value. Now if you could recollect what we observed in case of when we were discussing in terms of the entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, largely focusing on the entropy, when we arrived or when we reached this understanding that the entropy of the system should increase when the system is exhibiting an irreversible change. When we said that the entropy of the system should increase or should be positive and keep on increasing for the system to exhibit an irreversible or a spontaneous change, the corollary, one of the corollary of this understanding was that one way of realizing the system has reached a stable state is when we reach a state wherein the entropy is at its maximum. So supposing I have a combination of two materials, say A and B, which are miscible with each other and they are miscible throughout. So for different volume fractions, there is a possibility of a complete solid solution that can be achieved. So you have one component A, another component B. So these can mix or these can dissolve with one another in every proportion. So they are completely miscible. Now for a given temperature, when I consider the different volume fractions of A and B, so here I consider 20 volume fraction of A, 40 volume fraction of A, and rather 20 volume fraction of B, 40 volume fraction of B. So here it is 100% A, 100% A, and here it is 100% B, and now here 20% B is present, so 80% A, so 40% B is present, so the percentage of B keeps on increasing and correspondingly the percentage of A keeps on decreasing. Now for each of these combination, when I calculate the entropy and I plot it, now based on this curve here, so this is my entropy versus the combination of A and B curve. So I have a chemical composition and an entropy curve. The chemical composition is based on the difference in the percentage of B in A. So the percentage of B in A is increasing as you move this way. For a given temperature, I have a curve like this. Now, based on this curve, it is possible for me to say the stable state for a given temperature T is this one here. Because this is the peak, so the stable state for temperature T is the combination of 40% B in 60% A. This is possible because we know that based on the second law of thermodynamics, the entropy of the system should always increase. And the entropy of the system cannot decrease. It can either stay at zero, there cannot be any change in the entropy, or there can be an increase in the entropies. There are only two possibilities. So when we have such a criteria for describing the dynamic state of the system, then particularly when you focus on the irreversible or a spontaneous change, wherein which is associated with the increase in the entropy, then this spontaneous change in the system stops when the entropy assumes a maximum value, because once it has achieved the maximum values, there are only two possibilities for the systems to move. One, the system can stay in the spot here, or the system can move downwards. Now, the system cannot move downwards, and it is thermodynamically not possible, because when you move downwards, the system is decreasing its entropy. So that is thermodynamically not possible. So therefore, once the system reaches at this point, say O here, so once the system reaches this point here, the only possibility is for a system to stay in that point, and that point is the stable point. So what we essentially have is, when we have a criteria that states the change in the entropy should be positive and it should keep on increasing, then when we plot the change in the entropy, when we plot the entropy with respect to the concentration, and when we identify a peak, based on that we can state that that peak is principally the stable state of the system. Now let us focus on, or let us try to arrive at similar criteria for the Helmholtz free energy. Now here it was rather straightforward. We were considering just one thermodynamic variable, and we have rather schematically created this curve here. This was purely schematic because we are considering just one thermodynamic variable. In case of the Helmholtz free energy, what we essentially have is combinations of different thermodynamic variables. You have internal energy, you have temperature, which we assume it to be constant, and we have the entropy. Now when you consider the change in the Helmholtz free energy, you have change in the internal energy and change in the entropy. Now let us try to create such a schematic curve for the Helmholtz free energy. Here our schematic curve was for entropy alone. Let us try to create a similar schematic curve for Helmholtz free energy. Now when you consider the change in the Helmholtz free energy with in relation to its different thermodynamic variables, we will rewrite this expression here. So let us break down this expression into two. So when you want to graphically represent it, we will consider just the change in the internal energy with respect to the change in the Helmholtz free energy. So you have change in the internal energy with respect to the change in the Helmholtz free energy. So there is a linear relation between the change in the Helmholtz free energy with respect to that of the change in the internal energy. So it means as the internal energy increases, or as the Helmholtz free energy increases, we would expect a corresponding increase in the internal energy. So what we are doing is, we are considering, instead of considering the overall change of the Helmholtz free energy, we are breaking down it into simple framework. We are considering just the change in the internal energy with respect to the change in the Helmholtz free energy, then change in the entropy with respect to the change in the Helmholtz free energy. So when you consider the change in the Helmholtz free energy with respect to that of the change in the internal energy, it is rather straightforward. There is a linear relation. Now the same linear relation exists for the Helmholtz free energy and the entropy. However, it is preceded by the temperature term here. So therefore, when you consider the change in the entropy as the internal energy changes, or as with respect to that of the change in the Helmholtz free energy, because of the nature of the entropy, because of the description of the entropy, and because it is preceded by the temperature term here, even though it is possible for us to assume it to be linear because of the nature of the entropy. Entropy description is not as straightforward as that of the internal energy, because entropy, as particularly when you consider its statistical description, it has a different way of quantifying. We have a different way of quantifying the entropy. The relation between the these two thermodynamic variables, that is the Helmholtz free energy and the entropy, is not that straightforward. So you arrive at a curve of this form. So this curve, again, this is primarily because of the nature of the entropy, the nature or the way the entropy is related to that of a physical system. The entropy, when you want to quantify it, you have to go into or get into the statistical part of it, and you have to describe the, or you will be able to describe entropy convincingly for a material through only through a statistical description. And because of the statistical description, you have such a relation. So because of the statistical relation, even though the relation between these two appears to be linear, because of the statistical description of the entropy, you have such a unique curve. So the relation between the internal energy and the Helmholtz free energy is linear, straightforward, but the relation between the change in the change in the entropy is rather statistical, and therefore you have a curve of this form. Now here the internal energy is positive. The relation between the internal energy and the Helmholtz free energy is positive, whereas this relation between the change in the entropy and the Helmholtz free energy is negative. So therefore whatever slope that we have here gets totally reversed. So when you consider rather the change, the overall change in the Helmholtz free energy, then what you end up having is for a given system that is progressing towards its stable state, what you end up having. So when you have a progressive decrease in the or when you have a progressive change in the Helmholtz free energy, you have a corresponding increase in the internal energy and a corresponding change in the entropy. And because you have a negative sign here, whatever we observed in this curve becomes inverted, and you have a change something like this. So in this way the internal energy changes, and in this way, so it's just the internal energy change, and in this way the entropy changes. So for a given change in the state of the system, when you track the internal energy, it is positive, and when you track the entropy, it is negative. And entropy as a specific form of a description, so therefore you have a unique curve, and the internal energy as a straightforward description, therefore you have this expression here. Now combination of these two is what gives us the Helmholtz free energy. Now when you rather graphically combine these two, then ultimately this should help us understand how the Helmholtz free energy changes. So what you have is, you have combination of two thermodynamic variables, and we have expressed the rather graphically how these two thermodynamic variables changes. So each of these curves, it indicates this curve, it indicates the one here, it indicates the change in the internal energy, and the one here, it indicates the change in the entropy. So now by combining these two curves in a single plot, we are now attempting to describe the change in the Helmholtz free energy. Now initially, at the initial stages, the change in the Helmholtz free energy is governed by the decrease in the entropy. So therefore at the initial stages, the Helmholtz free energy will be in the negative side of this quadrant, the negative side of this plot. So it will be moved, it will be largely dictated by the negative change in the entropy. However, as time proceeds, it gradually is governed by, or is gradually pulled by, the increase in the internal energy. So the combination of the internal energy and the change in the internal energy and the change in the entropy ultimately derives, or ultimately it changes the Helmholtz free energy in this manner, wherein initially, so what we are considering here in red is the change in the Helmholtz free energy. Initial change, even though it is governed by the change in the entropy. So therefore there is the Helmholtz free energy is confined to the negative quadrant. However, as we proceed, the Helmholtz free energy, so particularly we are not considering the, when we say as we proceed, we are not talking in terms of the change in the state of the system, we are talking in terms of this curve. So as we go along this direction, as we try to increase or as we try to progress along this direction, what we essentially have is we have the Helmholtz free energy being governed by or largely by the internal energy. So when you have two different plots and when we want to merge this plot here, so we are not talking again in terms of any specific system, we are talking or considering purely we have represented the change in the internal energy and entropy using a graphical illustration. We have represented it using these plots, and we are combining these plots. We are not yet related this plot to a physical system. We have simply schematically represented the change in the internal energy, we have schematically represented the change in the entropy, and these two plots we have combined. Now when we combine these two plots, when we move along this x direction here, what we observe is, even though in the initial stage the red plot that indicates the Helmholtz free energy is governed by the entropy, as we move along the x-axis it is governed by the internal energy. So what we have done is, we have not considered any physical system yet. We are just comparing, we are just considering or relating two different thermodynamic variables, and these two different thermodynamic variables, once we have constructed it, once we have created a plot for this, we have combined it to understand the corresponding change in the Helmholtz free energy. This x-axis here can, as in the example here, this x-axis can be the percentage of P. So it is something that is schematic. So that is what we have created. So this x-axis here can again be this can be the percentage of, or rather this can be the volume fraction of, or the volume fraction of a specific component. But irrespective of it, what we are considering here is purely numerical, purely mathematical, and purely theoretical. We have theoretically created two plots, one for the internal energy and other for entropy. We have combined it to create, because this is a numerical expression here, so we have combined it to create a curve that graphically represents this numerical expression. So when you consider the nature of this curve, so that is what is critical to us, when you consider the nature of this curve here, what we observe is the initial stages of this curve is governed by, it's pulled down by the entropy. Since entropy occupies the negative quadrant, and because of the nature of the curve that is associated with entropy, the initial stages of the Helmholtz free energy is pulled by, or it is governed by, or it is dictated by the change in the entropy. However, as we move along the x-axis, as we proceed along the x-axis, the role of the internal energy becomes dominant, and therefore the nature of the change in the Helmholtz free energy curve, the change in the Helmholtz free energy curve assumes a trend like this. Now, if we go back to our previous discussion, we saw that when you have a condition that states the entropy should always increase for a spontaneous change, when you have such a criteria, then we saw that when we plot the change in the entropy for a given condition, the maximum indicates the stable state. So when you have a condition that states that the change in the entropy should always increase, then you plot the change in the entropy for different for a given system, then we saw that the maximum indicates the stable spot. Now when we translate the same understanding to this curve which we have here, we saw that the change in the Helmholtz free energy is negative and it should be minimal. So this should be decreasing for a progressive for a spontaneous reaction to progress. So the change in the Helmholtz free energy should be negative and it should decrease for the system to progress towards a new stable state. For this condition, when we apply the same understanding which we gained here, then the stable state is nothing but the minima that we observe here. So what we have is, in case of entropy, wherein according to the second law of thermodynamics, the spontaneous reaction, the irreversible reaction will proceed only when there is an increase in the entropy. In that case, the maximum entropy indicates the stable state. Now in case of the same description of the dynamic system, the description of a rather spontaneous reaction wherein the system moves from unstable state to a stable state, in such a case, when the change in the state of the system is described using the Helmholtz free energy, then the Helmholtz free energy should decrease for the system to progress towards its new stable state. When the Helmholtz free energy should decrease for the spontaneous reaction to progress. Under such a condition, the minimum point dictates, the global minima dictates the stable state of the system. So, when you apply that understanding, this point here will be O, and this indicates the stable state of the system. Now, the reason we state that this indicates the stable state of the system is because if you move towards this direction, or if we move towards this direction, or if we move towards this direction, essentially what you are doing is you are increasing the Helmholtz free energy, which is not possible. So, in the framework of the spontaneous reaction, it is not possible for us to increase the Helmholtz free energy. So, therefore, the minima, the global minima acts as, or the global minima indicates the stable state of the system. So, what we have is, we have now schematically rather combined the change in the internal energy and the change in the entropy to arrive at a characteristic curve for the change in the Helmholtz free energy, and the minima of this Helmholtz free energy curve dictates the stable position. Now, we saw that, or one of the compromise that we made during the derivation of the Helmholtz free energy is we assumed the temperature to be constant. Now, supposing we have another state with for a different temperature. So, in this case, it is assumed that the temperature is constant. So, we assumed that the temperature is constant. Now, if we consider another temperature, so this curve here, the one that we are pointing at, so this curve here for the entropy is for the temperature T1. Now, if I assume another temperature T2 which is greater than that of T1, then the degree of the progress that is made by the entropy in the negative direction will be even more significant. So, let me use a different color. So, when I consider a temperature that is greater than that of T1, so now what essentially I am doing is, I now have an expression for the change in the Helmholtz free energy of the system. Now, this expression, while for deriving it, I assume the temperature is to be constant. Now, having translated it to a graphical setup, having translated it to a graphical illustration, now I am relaxing this constant temperature assumption, and now I am including another temperature, and this temperature is rather greater than that of the temperature that I have initially considered. Now, when I have such a consideration, because this temperature is greater than the initial temperature, the new temperature T1 is greater than that of the initial temperature T2, and since we have a negative sign that precedes the combination of T and S, the T2S curve will be more negative than the T1S curve. So, we have the same system, and the only difference now is the T2 is greater than T1, and because T2 is greater than T1, and since there is a negative sign that precedes these two terms here, so the T2, the change in the entropy at the higher temperature will be more negative than the change in the entropy at the lower temperature. Now, in this case, correspondingly, what would happen is the curve for the Helmholtz free energy changes. Now, let me use red to dictate this change in the Helmholtz free energy, but I will present it in the dotted line. So, now this dotted line indicates the Helmholtz change in the Helmholtz free energy for the new higher temperature T2. So, the solid line is for T1 and the dotted line is for T2, and since at T2 we have even significant change or even significant negative change in the entropy, the overall change in the Helmholtz free energy is further dragged in at T2. So, there is at T1 there is the Helmholtz free energy is pulled down by the entropy, and this pulling down is further increased at the higher temperature T2, because at T2 the negative aspect, the negative change in the entropy is even higher. So, since it is further pulled down at higher temperature T2, this minima or the stable state of the system, it shifts. So, essentially, let us try to focus on the difference the temperature brings in the schematic representation separately, what we initially have is, what we initially did is we combined two variables. One is the internal energy and other is the entropy, and this we did for a specific temperature T1. Now the internal energy in the relation for the Helmholtz free energy is independent of the temperature. So there is no dependency of the internal energy on the Helmholtz free energy. On the other hand, we have a dependency of the internal the entropy on the Helmholtz free energy. Now we saw that it is the entropy that gives us the dip for the Helmholtz free energy. It is because this entropy occupies the negative quadrant. The Helmholtz free energy assumes a dip in the initial stages. So this is something that helps us arrive at the characteristic curve for Helmholtz free energy. So for T1, if I plot the Helmholtz free energy, then I arrive at this characteristic curve here, and this dictates the stable position, or this dictates the stable spot for T1. Now what essentially, so this again, this all the one in black is for temperature T1. Now let us consider for temperature T2 that is greater than T1. Now the internal energy, since it is independent of the temperature, in this context it remains the same. Now for T2, because T2 is higher than greater than T1, the entropy will be even more negative, and the role of entropy, so this is for T2, or rather we can even more write it as T2s, and this one would be T1. And now we have a change in the entropy that is even more negative. So that means what we essentially have is the change in the Helmholtz free energy will even more be pulled towards the negative quadrants. The extent of the negative quadrant, or the extent of the nature of this curve, the extent of the curve that is being spent in the negative quadrant will even more be higher. So therefore at temperature T2 the curve will assume a form like this. So you have for temperature T1 and for temperature T2 these two distinct curves schematically representing the change in the Helmholtz free energy. Now what we have done is we have relaxed the isothermal consideration that we initially had while deriving the expression for the Helmholtz free energy. Now when we relax this temperature, we identify that there is a shift in the stable state of the system. So here this indicates the stable state at T1 and this indicates the stable state at T2. So O and O prime. So that O prime indicates the change or shift in the stable state of the system when you increase this temperature. This change in the stable state of the system is primarily because the change in the entropy is correspondingly influenced by the change in the temperature. So as the temperature increases, the minima of the Helmholtz free energy, it increases and it also gets shifted, and correspondingly the stable state of the system gets shifted. So this is the influence of relaxing our initial assumption on the constant temperature. When you relax our initial assumption on the constant temperature, we observe that the stable state of the system, it shifts from one point to another. So what we have essentially done is, in order to understand the consequence of relaxing the constant temperature, we understand that the stable state of the system changes. For a given temperature there is one stable state, and for another temperature, higher or lower, the stable state changes. It is possible for us to even consider a temperature T3 that is less than that of T1, and it is possible for us to appropriately construct a schematic representation, a schematic plot for the corresponding change in the entropy, and then draw the consequent change in the overall consequent change in the Helmholtz free energy. So what this graphical representation helps us understand it. So this is purely theoretical. So what we have is, again, to recollect what we have gone through or how we arrived at this curve, is that we considered the change in two different thermodynamic variables. We schematically considered the change in the two different thermodynamic variables. We did not attribute any physical significance to it. We considered the linear relation between one variable to another, and we considered this linear plot here. And we arrived at this unique trend for the entropy because of two reasons. One because of its statistical description. The entropy has a statistical description to it, and secondly, because it is associated with the temperature, we have a characteristic trend for this entropy. Again, this is all largely based on our assumption. This is all largely purely theoretical. We have not yet related anything to the physical system. We just have two different curves of two different terms or two different trends. So we just combine these two curves and arrived at this red curve that indicate the change in the Helmholtz free energy. We have two different curves. We combined it to arrive at this curve that indicated the change in the Helmholtz free energy. Now, once we arrive at a curve for the change in the Helmholtz free energy, now we bring in the physical aspect to it. The way we bring in the physical aspect to it is by considering this criteria that the change in the Helmholtz free energy should be or should decrease when a system exhibits a spontaneous and an irreversible change. Now, by introducing this criteria here, we were able to identify. So, the only relation that relates this illustration to a physical system is this criteria here. And once we introduced this criteria, we were able to identify the minimas, and we saw that when the constant temperature assumption is relaxed, the minima correspondingly changes, and it is largely due to the change in the entropy. So with this, we will wind this lecture up, and in the next lecture, we will see what changes would occur when we relax the other assumption that is associated with volume. Goodbye.